They have my eyes, James Whittaker whispered, his voice trembling as he stood frozen in the glittering ballroom of Chicago's Art Institute, the site of two 6-year-old twins, their rich brown skin glowing like their mother Alicia's, unraveled his polished world. 7 years had passed since he last saw his ex-wife, her long wavy hair, now framing a face both familiar and distant. His parents, Evelyn and Charles, white and steeped in privilege, gasped when they learned the truth. Shock, indignation, and a flicker of awe at the grandchildren they'd never known. This revelation shattered their icy reserve, setting a billionaire on an unexpected path. A single night turned James's empire of wealth into a quest for redemption, forever altering a family's legacy. Subscribe to catch every twist, and share where and when you're listening. Let's see how far this story travels. The Chicago skyline burned, amber against the October dusk, a mosaic of glass and steel that James Whittaker had long claimed as his kingdom. From the 60th floor of Sterling Tower, the 6-year-old tech titan stood at his office window, hands clasped behind his back, his tailored suit as immaculate as his reputation. Whittaker Innovations, his AI empire, had redefined industries, amassing billions and earning him a Forbes cover that dubbed him the architect of tomorrow. Yet, as the city pulsed below, a hollow ache gnawed at his chest, a whisper that no boardroom victory could silence. He turned from the view, his polished loafers silent on the hardwood floor, and scanned the office. Sleek minimalist furniture, a wall of awards, a single frame photo of him shaking hands with the senator. No family portraits, no traces of warmth. James had built this life deliberately, brick by calculated brick, after a marriage that crumbled under the weight of his ambition. Alicia Dawson, with her radiant smile and fierce spirit, had been his anchor. A black woman whose love had felt like home. But 7 years ago, he'd chosen power over her. And the memory of her tear-streaked face as she walked away still haunted him in fleeting, unguarded moments. Tonight, he was due at a charity auction at the Art Institute of Chicago, a glittering affair where his presence would secure headlines and donations for urban education. It was a role he played flawlessly. The benevolent billionaire, untouchable and admired. He adjusted his cufflinks, each engraved with a Whittaker crest, and forced a smile into the mirror by his desk. "You've got this," he muttered, though the reflection staring back seemed to disagree. A man whose sharp blue eyes held more shadows than light. As he reached for his coat, a soft knock broke the silence. Margaret Thompson, his assistant of 15 years, stepped in. Her graying hair pulled into a neat bun, her expression uncharacteristically hesitant. Margaret was the closest thing James had to a confidant, though he'd never admit it. She knew his coffee order, his meeting quirks, even the way he deflected personal questions with a charming laugh. "Mr. Whittaker," she said, holding a cream-colored envelope. "This arrived by courier. It's from Dawson and Reed Law Firm. Marked personal." The name Dawson hit like a rogue wave. "Alicia," his throat tightened, and for a moment, the room seemed to tilt. He hadn't heard her name in years, hadn't allowed himself to think of her. "Leave it on the desk," he said, his voice clipped, betraying none of the storm brewing inside. Margaret hesitated, her eyes searching his face as if she sensed the weight of the moment. "It's urgent." "Sire," they insisted. "You see it tonight." James waved her off, forcing a casual tone. "I'll deal with it later. The Gala waits." She set the envelope down, its stark presence a blemish on the desk's polished surface, and left quietly. James stared at it, his pulse quickening. Dawson and Reed. Alicia was a lawyer now. He'd heard through whispers in Chicago's elite circles, a civil rights advocate, fierce and principled. Why would she reach out? After 7 years of silence, the divorce had been final, their bridges burned. He changed his number, his address, his life, erecting walls to keep the past at bay. Yet here it was, breaching his defenses. In a single envelope, he crossed to the desk, his fingers hovering over the letter. Part of him wanted to tear it open, to confront whatever truth lay inside. Another part, the part that had built an empire on control, urged him to toss it in the shredder. Memories flickered, unbidden. Alicia's laughter in their cramped Rogers Park apartment, her bringing him coffee as he pored over code, the fights that grew from whispers to shouts as his dreams outgrew hers. I can't compete with your obsession, James, she'd said the night she left, her voice breaking. He'd let her go, too proud to chase her, too blind to see the cost. The clock on the wall chimed 6:30 p.m., snapping him back. The gala. He couldn't be late. James grabbed his coat, shoving the envelope into his briefcase as if burying it could bury the past. But as he rolled the elevator down, the city's lights blurring through the glass, the weight of it pressed against him. What did Alicia want? An apology, a reckoning, or something else? Something that could unravel the life he'd so carefully constructed. In the chauffeured Bentley, James leaned back, the leather creaking under him. The radio played soft jazz, a cruel echo of the nights he and Alicia had danced in their tiny kitchen. He closed his eyes, trying to focus on the auction, bids, speeches, the usual dance of influence. But his mind kept drifting to the envelope, to the woman who'd once been his everything. The car pulled up to the Art Institute, its grand steps swarming with photographers and Chicago's elite. James stepped out, flashing his trademark smile. But inside, a crack had formed in his facade. Tonight, he sensed, was the beginning of something he couldn't control. A story that would rewrite his own. The Art Institute of Chicago shimmered under a canopy of stars. Its grand hall, a kaleidoscope of wealth and ambition. Chandeliers cast golden light over tuxedos and sequin gowns, while a jazz quartet's sultry notes wove through the chatter of the city's elite. James Whittaker glided through the charity auction, his smile a practice mask, but the weight of the unopened letter from Dawson and Reed law firm burned in his briefcase. It had followed him from Sterling Tower, a silent specter of Alicia Dawson, the woman he'd loved and lost 7 years ago. He sipped champagne, nodding at a senator's anecdote, but his mind was elsewhere, tangled in memories of her laughter and the pain of their partying. He excused himself, seeking air, and leaned against a marble column near the windows, overlooking Michigan Avenue. The city pulsed below, oblivious to the crack forming in his carefully curated world. Then a familiar melody from the quartet, a Billie Holiday standard Alicia used to hum, drew his gaze across the room. His breath caught. There she was, seated at a table near the edge of the hall, her presence like a beacon in the sea of strangers. Alicia Dawson, her warm brown skin glowing against a sapphire gown, her long wavy hair cascading in soft, elegant curls over her shoulders. She was as radiant as the day he'd met her, a black woman whose grace had once anchored his restless heart. But it wasn't just Alicia. Beside her sat two girls, identical twins, no older than 6, their rich complexions mirroring their mothers. They wore matching navy dresses, their dark curls adorned with tiny silver clips. One clutched a sketch pad, her fingers smudged with charcoal. The other fidgeted with a napkin, her eyes darting with restless curiosity. James's heart stuttered as he studied them, their sharp cheekbones, the piercing blue of their eyes. It was like staring into a mirror. "They have my eyes," he whispered, the words escaping before he could stop them, his voice trembling with the truth he wasn't ready to name. He crossed the room, drawn by an invisible thread, his polished facade crumbling with each step. Alicia looked up, her laughter with the girls fading to a weary mask. "James," she said, her voice cool but steady, a fortress against the past. The twins peered at him, curious but unafraid. "Are they?" he began, the question choking in his throat. Alicia's grip on their hands tightened, her eyes flashing with defiance. "My daughters," she said, the words a wall unyielding. The girl with the sketch pad, Emma, he'd later learn, tilted her head. "Mom." "Who's he?" Alicia softened for her daughter, her wavy hair brushing her cheek. "An old friend, sweetie, from a long time ago." James's world tilted. The math was merciless. 7 years since their divorce. 6 years for these girls to exist. His mind raced, piecing together a possibility that felt both impossible and undeniable. He opened his mouth, but words failed him, drowned by the roar of his pulse. Alicia stood, guiding the twins toward a desert table, her posture a silent command to stay back. But James followed, desperate for answers, his briefcase forgotten on a chair. "Ally, please," he said, catching her near a display of silent auction items. His voice low to avoid the girl's ears. "We need to talk." Her eyes, once warm with love, now held a guarded fire. "Not here, James. Not now." But the urgency in his gaze must have reached her, because she sighed, her shoulders softening slightly. "Tomorrow, my office. Call first." She handed him a business card, her fingers brushing his for a fleeting second. Electric, with memory. Before he could respond, a sharp voice cut through. James. Was this? Evelyn Whitaker, his mother, stood with his father, Charles, their pale faces etched with shock. They'd been mingling nearby. Drawn by the tension, Evelyn's eyes darted to the twins, now giggling over cupcakes, and her hand flew to her pearls. "Those girl, they look like you." Charles, usually stoic, but his gaze flickering between Alicia and the children. 7 years of silence. And now this, a truth that struck like lightning, exposing the grandchildren they'd never known. Alicia faced them, her wavy hair a halo under the chandelier's glow. "They're mine," she repeated, her voice ablaze, daring them to challenge her. Evelyn's indignation flared, but Charles's hand on her arm stilled her. "Not here," he murmured, his eyes lingering on the twins, with a mix of awe and regret. James stepped forward, his voice low but fierce. "Leave it, Mother. We'll talk later." The Whiters retreated, their shock, a storm cloud trailing them. As Alicia led the girls away, James stood rooted, the Gala's glamour fading to a blur. The letter in his briefcase, Alicia's card in his hand, the twins. Blue eyes. These were no coincidence. A single night had shattered his empire of control, and he knew with a certainty that chilled him that nothing would ever be the same. The Chicago morning was gray, a veil of mist, cloaking Bronzeville's brick facades as James Whitaker stepped from his Bentley onto the cracked sidewalk. The events of the previous night at the Art Institute's gala clung to him like damp air. The sight of Alicia Dawson, her long wavy hair framing a face, both familiar and fierce, and the twin girls, Emma and Ava, whose blue eyes mirrored his own. Their existence, a seismic shock, after 7 years of silence, had left him sleepless. The business card Alicia gave him, worn from restless handling, now standing before her law office, a modest storefront, wedged between a soul food diner and a barber shop. James felt the weight of a truth he could no longer dodge. Inside, the office hummed with quiet purpose. Bookshelves sagged under legal to a corkboard displayed children's drawings, their crayon lines a stark contrast to the sterile elegance of his Sterling Tower suite. A receptionist, her braids adorned with gold beads, led him to a small room where Alicia waited behind a cluttered desk. She wore a tailored blazer, her rich brown skin glowing in the soft light filtering through a window. Her wavy hair cascaded over her shoulders, elegant, yet untamed. It's a reminder of the woman who'd once danced with him in their Rogers Park apartment. But her eyes, sharp and guarded, held no trace of that warmth. "James," she said, rising, her voice steady but laced with caution. "You came." He nodded, clutching his briefcase, where the unopened letter from Dawson and Reed law firm lay like a grenade. "Did you think I wouldn't?" he asked, his tone softer than he intended. Alicia's lips twitched, not get a smile. "The James I knew would have moved mountains to be here. The one you became, I wasn't sure." They sat the desk of Battlefield between them. James's mind replayed the gala, the twins' faces, Emma's sketchpad, Ava's restless energy, his parents' shock. He cleared his throat. "Those girls, are they mine?" Alicia's gaze didn't waver, but her fingers tightened around the pen. "You don't get to waltz in and demand answers. James, you lost that right when you shut me out." Her words were cut, precise, and unyielding, but he pressed on, desperation creeping into his voice. "Ali, I need to know, please." She leaned back, studying him, then reached for a photo album on the shelf. 7 years ago, after our divorce, I found out I was pregnant. She began, her voice low, each word deliberate. "Twins. I was alone. James, a black woman starting over in a city that doesn't always make it easy. I tried to tell you calls to your office, emails, letters, sent by certified mail. Your assistant, that cold woman before Margaret, blocked. Everyone said you were too busy for your ex-wife." James's stomach churned. He remembered those months, drowning in code and contracts, ordering his team to filter out anything personal to shield himself from the pain of losing her. "I didn't know," he said, the words hollow even to his ears. Alicia's eyes flashed. "I called for weeks. I wrote until my hand cramped. You changed your number, your email, your life. I got the message. You didn't want to be found." The truth landed like a blow, but there was more. Margaret had called him that morning, her voice urgent. She'd found a file in the office archives, buried in a box from his old assistant's tenure. A letter from Alicia, dated 6 years ago, returned unopened. James pulled it from his briefcase now, its edges yellowed. "This came to light today," he said, sliding it across the desk. "I never saw it." Alicia's breath caught as she read the date. Her fingers trembled, but she didn't open it. "I wrote doesn't like it," she said, her voice cracking. "That one said I was pregnant, that I hoped you'd care. I stopped trying when I realized you'd built a fortress around yourself." She set the letter down, her eyes glistening. "But resolute, Emma and Ava are mine. James, I raised them, loved them, and protected them. If you want to be part of their lives, it's not about biology. It's about showing up." He nodded. Guilt and resolve wearing within him. "I was wrong. I lie about everything. I want to know them to be their father if you'll let me." Alicia studied him, her gaze piercing. "Words are cheap. Prove it. With time. Not your checkbook." She slid the album toward him, opened to a photo of the twins at their first birthday, their dark curls adorned with tiny bows. Emma's quiet draws her heart out. Ava's fearless, always solving something. Start there. As he left, the letter and album tucked under his arm. James felt the city's pulse sync with his own, a rhythm of regret and possibility. Alicia's challenge echoed. Prove it. He didn't know how, but the twins' faces, so like his, yet so much their mother's, were a map to a future he couldn't ignore. The autumn wind swept through Chicago streets, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and the distant hum of the city. James Whittaker stood in his Sterling Tower office. The photo album from Alicia Dawson's law office opened on his desk. Images of Emma and Ava, his 6-year-old twin daughters. Their rich, brown skin and blue eyes, a haunting blend of their black mother and his own features, stared back at him. Alicia's words from their Bronzeville meeting echoed. Prove it with time, not your checkbook. The challenge had rooted itself in him, a seed of purpose amid the guilt that had kept him awake since learning of her blocked attempts to reach him 7 years ago. The unopened letter she'd written, now tucked in his drawer, there was a silent reminder of his failure and his chance to make amends. James had always conquered challenges with strategy, but this was no boardroom deal. Alicia had set clear rules. He could meet the twins as Mr. James, a friend. Until she deemed him ready for more, he started small. His wealth, a tool he wielded with care. At Margaret's suggestion, his trusted assistant, he sent anonymous gifts to their South Side elementary school. A set of professional sketchbooks for Emma, whose key adept shone in her art, and a collection of logic puzzles for Ava, whose fearless curiosity tackled any problem. The school's thank you note, pinned to his office wall, was his first victory, a whisper of connection to the girls he longed to know. October's end brought the Lincoln Park Halloween Fair, a vibrant sprawl of jack-o'-lanterns, rides, and children's laughter under a canopy of orange and gold. Alicia had agreed to let James join them there. A tentative step forward. He arrived early, his usual suit traded for a navy sweater, feeling oddly exposed without his corporate armor. The fair buzzed with families, the air thick with the aroma of caramel apples and kettle corn. He spotted Alicia near a pumpkin carving station, her long wavy hair catching the sunlight, her sapphire scarf, a nod to the gala where their worlds had collided. Emma and Ava flanked her, dressed as a painter and a scientist, their dark curls bouncing with excitement. Mr. James, Ava called, spotting him first, her grin bold and unguarded. Emma hung back, clutching a small canvas, her eyes wary but curious. Alicia nodded, her expression neutral but watchful. Glad you made it, she said, her voice a careful balance of courtesy and caution. James knelt to the twins' level, his heart pounding. Love the costumes. Who's carving the scariest pumpkin? Ava launched into a tale of her planned zombie scientist design, while Emma shilly showed him her sketch of a starry night, here, fingersmul, with charcoal. For a moment, the world narrowed to their voices, and James felt a flicker of something he hadn't had in years. Hope. The moment was shattered with a sharp gasp. James, what is this? Evelyn Whittaker's voice sliced through the fair's den, her pale face taut with indignation. His parents, Evelyn and Charles, stood behind a hay bale, their pristine coats out of place amid the festive chaos. They'd heard whispers of James's secret through Chicago's elite grapevine and tracked him here. Evelyn's eyes locked on the twins, her hand clutching her purse. Those girls, they're yours, aren't they? Charles, his white hair catching the sunlight, looked stunned, his gaze softening as Ava chattered to James about her pumpkin. Alicia stepped forward, her wavy hair a defiant halo. They're my Daughters, she said, her tone, a steel blade, echoing her stand at the gala. I raised them, love them, without your family's name. Evelyn's lips parted, ready to retort, but James rose, his voice low and fierce. Mother, enough. Alicia's done more for them than we ever could. If you can't respect her, you don't belong here. The words forged in. The fire of Alicia's challenge stunned Evelyn into silence. Charles placed a hand on her arm, his eyes on the twins. A mix of regret and wonder in his expression. They're beautiful. James, he murmured almost to himself. Let's not ruin this. Evelyn's face tightened, but she turned away. Charles guiding her toward the fair's exit. The twins, oblivious to the tension, tugged James to a ring toss game. Their laughter, a balm to the raw wound of the encounter. Alicia watched, her eyes unreadable, but she didn't pull the girls away. As James helped Ava aim for a prize, winning her a stuffed bat, and praised Emma's starry sketch, he felt a shift, a fragile thread of trust forming. The fair's lights twinkled against the dusk, and for the first time, James dared to. The Chicago winter pressed against the city like an uninvited guest, its breath seeping through every crack of glass and steel. Inside Sterling Tower, James Whittaker sat in his office, yet his mind was nowhere near the boardroom. For the first time in years, warmth stirred within him, not from success or wealth, but from two little girls who had begun to rewrite his life. Ever since the Halloween fair in Lincoln Park, when he had stood his ground against his parents and won a stuffed bat for Ava, James had felt a shift. The faces of his 6-year-old twin daughters, Emma and Ava, haunted him in the best way. Their rich brown skin, their startling blue eyes, reflections of his own, reminded him of the love and resilience they carried from their mother. Alicia, she had challenged him. Prove it, not with money, but with time. So he began small, not as a billionaire CEO, but as a father trying to claim a role he had never earned. At first, it was anonymous. Gifts, sketchbooks for Emma, puzzles for Ava, but soon the gifts carried notes, handwritten and signed. Mr. James. He slipped them into the twins' school bags at Southside Elementary, hoping each word would build trust. Above his desk now hung Emma's drawing, a crayon starry night with a stick figure family beneath it. Beside it lay Ava's thank you note, a math problem, solved and scrawled in childish script. These small offerings were bricks, fragile but hopeful, laid one by one into the foundation of a bridge he was desperate to build. Thanksgiving brought his first true test. Alicia invited him into her Wicker Park brownstone, the air rich with roasted turkey and warm cornbread. Emma greeted him in a paint-stained sweater. Ava, with a Rubik's Cube clutch in her hand. Alicia, her long wavy hair loose around her shoulders, watched, with eyes that carried both hope and caution. Over dinner, James did not dominate the conversation. Instead, he listened. Ava explained the cube's algorithms with the gravity of a professor, while Emma described the mural she had painted at school. For the first time, James felt less like a visitor and more like he belonged at that table. But life has a way of testing promises when they're most fragile. Days later, in the middle of a tense board meeting, James's phone lit up with Alicia's name. Her voice was tight, edged with panic. It's Emma. She's having an asthma attack. We're in an ambulance to Lurie Children's. The room fell away. His heart slammed harder than it ever had in a high-stakes deal. Cancel everything, he barked to his assistant. Margaret, family emergency. He tore through Chicago's icy streets, headlights blurring against the frost. Fear clawing at his chest. At Lurie Children's, he found Alicia in the waiting room, her long hair tied back, her face carved with worry. Ava sat beside her, clutching a puzzle book, eyes swollen from tears. Where's Emma? James demanded, his voice breaking. They took her back, Alicia whispered. Her oxygen levels. They're too low. Her voice cracked, and instinctively, James pulled both her and Ava into his arms. "She'll be okay," he said, though the words were as much a prayer as a promise. Hours crawled by in that sterile room, the beep of monitors echoing like a metronome of dread. Alicia whispered through tears, "I should have noticed her wheezing last night. I thought the inhaler was enough." James took her hand, holding it with a rare steadiness. "You're an incredible mother," he said firmly. "We're in this together now." When the doctor finally emerged, his words were a lifeline. Emma was stable, on medication, but needed overnight observation. Relief flooded James so sharply, his knees threatened to give out. In the hospital room, Emma looked impossibly small beneath the white sheets, tubes at her nose. But when she opened her eyes and saw them, she whispered a word that nearly undid him. "Dad?" It was the first time she had ever called him that. James's heart lurched. He took her tiny hand gently. "I'm here, sweetheart." Ava climbed carefully onto the bed, solving a puzzle aloud to distract her sister. James and Alicia exchanged a glance over Emma's head, an unspoken pact forged in crisis, that they would fight for these girls together. The scare planted a seed in James's mind. Over coffee in the hospital cafeteria, his voice steady with resolve, he told Alicia, "I want to buy a townhouse near yours, renovate it, so you and the girls have the main house, and I have a separate suite. I need to be close for Emma's treatments, for them." Alicia hesitated, tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "It's a big step, James. They're starting to trust you." He nodded. "I know this isn't for us. It's for them. I want to show up every day." A week later, she agreed. James found a brick townhouse in Wicker Park, its facade glowing under the pale winter sun. He hired contractors to split it into two distinct spaces. The main house became a haven, an art studio for Emma, a puzzle nook for Ava. His own suite was modest, almost austere, but it carried one essential quality: consistency. As the twins grew comfortable, calling him dad with a little less hesitation each time, James felt his old-world boardrooms, headlines, prestige, fade into the background. Emma's crayon drawings and Ava's triumphant puzzle solutions became his new empire. Fragile, but real. An empire not of ambition, but of love. He was only beginning to understand. Chicago's skyline shimmered against the late spring dusk, each light scattered like stars across the horizon. On a River North rooftop strung with fairy lights, the air was alive with laughter, jazz, and the faint salt of Lake Michigan's breeze. James Whittaker stood at the edge of the celebration, watching his daughters weave through the crowd, their joy carrying higher than any skyscraper he had ever built. It had been a year since the Halloween fair, where everything shifted since he had seen Emma and Ava in their matching costumes, since he had stood toe-to-toe with his parents and realized that power meant nothing without love. Now, under these rooftop lights, the Wicker Park arrangement, two homes joined by one purpose had become more than a plan. It was a family, fragile, yet real. Emma and Ava, newly 7, darted between friends in lilac dresses that caught the glow of the lights. Their dark curls bounced as they laughed, their eyes alight with a joy James now lived for. He marveled at them, the quiet artist and the bold problem solver, so different, yet bound by a fierce sisterhood that anchored him to the ground nearby. Alicia Dawson moved gracefully among the guests, her crimson dress a stroke of brilliance against the night. Her long, wavy hair shimmered with each turn, and though James's heart no longer reached for romance, it swelled with admiration. Alicia had carried the weight alone for so many years, shaping the girls into the bright, fearless children they were. Tonight, he honored her as much as he did them. Even Evelyn and Charles Whittaker, once pillars of cold tradition, had softened. Evelyn, her hair no longer bound in rigid perfection, knelt beside Emma, helping arrange a tiny art station. Charles, long, stern, and commanding, now chuckled as Ava rattled off math facts with lightning speed. Their rigid armor had cracked, reshaped by two little girls who refused to be invisible. Margaret, his faithful assistant turned family historian, captured the moments with her camera, her smile tender, and James, standing at the center of it all, felt the unfamiliar but steady weight of peace. In his pocket lay a worn letter Alicia had written years ago, tucked away and forgotten until he stumbled upon it in his office. Its edges were frayed now, folded so many times it had become part of him. "I hope you'll love them someday," it read. Those words had guided him through late nights of doubt, through Emma's hospital stay, through the long winter of second chances. And tonight, he finally believed he had kept that promise. As the jazz trio fell quiet, James stepped forward. The conversations hushed, and the twins turned to him with wide eyes. The skyline framed him, but for once, he did not need its height or grandeur. "A year ago," he began, voice steady. "I thought success was wealth, power, control. But then I met two extraordinary girls and their fearless mother, and they showed me what it really means." He turned to Emma, his voice warm. "Emma, your art lights up my world." Then to Ava, who straightened with pride. "Ava, your courage challenges me to be better every single day." His throat tightened, but he held firm. "You've both taught me that real success is showing up, making mistakes, and trying again. I am your dad, and I will never stop choosing you." The crowd erupted in cheers, mistaking his vow for a toast. But James barely heard them, because Emma and Ava were already in his arms. "Best dad ever," Ava shouted, fierce and unfiltered. Emma, quieter but glowing, pressed a folded drawing into his hand. "I made this for you, Dad." He opened it carefully. Crayon lines sketched a family beneath a starry sky, their Wicker Park home glowing like a beacon. His chest tightened, tears rising. He knelt, pulling them close, the picture trembling in his hand. Alicia approached, her eyes soft, her voice low. "You've kept your promise," she said. James pulled the letter from his pocket, his edges frayed. "This kept me going," he admitted, his voice thick. "Your hope, even when I didn't deserve it." Her hand brushed his arm gentle. "Steady, you did the work, James. That's why they love you." Then came his surprise with a nod to Margaret. The rooftop canopy flickered to life. A projector bathed the night sky in constellations, each star glowing across the canvas of darkness. Inspired by Emma's art, the display transformed the city rooftop into a galaxy. The twins gasped, naming each star Mama Star, Ava Star, Daddy Star. Their voices rose like prayers. Evelyn dabbed her eyes, pressing small lockets with family photos into their hands. "For your dreams, my dears." Charles tossed a foam football toward Ava, her laughter echoing against the skyline. And then, as if scripted by fate, fireworks from a nearby festival burst across the horizon. Red, gold, and silver lit the night. Mirrored in the twins' wide eyes, James stood with Alicia, shoulder to shoulder, watching their daughters dance beneath the constellations. "Thank you," he whispered, raw with gratitude, "for giving me this chance. You chose them every day." Alicia replied, her curls brushing her shoulders. "That's what matters." The rooftop pulsed with joy, laughter, and light. For James, the empire he once chased in towers and boardrooms had dissolved. His true empire was here, sketched in crayon, whispered in small voices that called him Dad, stitched together with second chances and promises kept. As the night gave way to dawn, the Chicago stars dimmed. But a new constellation burned brighter than any skyline. James Whittaker's family. Imperfect, unconventional, but whole.